Another kind of story that's very popular with both younger and older kids, and that often borders into the area of myth, is a story that's called explanatory stories. And they're called explanatory because they explain how something gets to be the way they are. You've heard a lot of Native American stories, maybe, that explains different natural phenomena, how trees, why birch bark has black spots on it, or why the sun and the moon live in the sky. I told a story that I really liked to the other class that is a story about how bear got a stubby tail. That's a classic Norwegian story. And what's cool about it is you can find a very similar version in Native American collections of stories, which shows you how universal some of these stories are. Do a lot of you know that story about bear? I'll tell it. It's very short. Once upon a time, one year, they got this really early winter. It came way earlier than any animals expected, and it was really rough on Bear because he had not planned ahead of time. He had not eaten enough food, and now he needed to go and hibernate. And he was just starving. You can't sleep when you're hungry. He was lying on a rock one day. He was mad because the lakes were frozen over, and all the berries and roots and everything was covered under layers of ice and snow, and he didn't know how he was going to get through the winter. When he was lying there feeling all growly and grumpy, suddenly he sees Mr. Fox. A fox comes walking by, and he's got this huge slinger of fish in his mouth. He can't believe it. He goes, Mr. Fox, where did you get that fish? Well, said the fox, I went ice fishing. How'd you do that? Said the bear. Oh, it's easy for you. What you do is you go out onto the lake, you dig a hole in the ice, and then you take your tail. And he pointed to Bear's tail. For in those days, Bear had a beautiful bushy tail to match the rest of him. You take your tail, you stick it in the hole, and you sit down and you wait. You've got to be really quiet, mustn't move, because if you do, you're going to scare away the fish. After a while, it's going to start to hurt in your tail, and that's a good sign, because that means the fish are biting. When it hurts so much you think you don't need any more fish, you've got to jerk up as fast as you can so the fish, won't have time to let go. And then you'll get all the fish you can eat. Oh, it's a great idea, said Bear. I'm going. And so he jumped off of his rack and he lumbered onto the ice and he dug a nice big hole in it. He took his big, beautiful tail and stuck it inside the hole and he sat down waiting. I thought, oh, I'm so hungry, I can't wait. After a while, he went, oh, that hurt. That's probably a pike. There's pretty sharp teeth there. Oh, it's probably sturgeon. Some lake trout and probably walleye. He thought, this is probably more than I know how to eat. I'll be okay. And so when he finally had sat there long enough and it hurt so bad he couldn't stand it, he jerked up and he jerked his tail right off. The ice had frozen solid around his tail so that when he jerked up, he ripped his tail off. And all that Bear was left with was this stubby little stump of a tail. And from that day on, Bear has had only a little stumpy tail to this very day. Och snipp, snapp, snute, här är äventyret ute. Oh, you better do better. Some of you are a little too quiet.